Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about toponymy, which is the study of place names. At first glance, place names may seem simple. We use them every day to refer to cities, rivers, mountains, villages, and regions. But in fact, each name contains a story. Curious, a place name can preserve traces of language, geography, culture, and history. It can show us how people understood the landscape around them, what they valued, and what events shaped their world. This is why toponymy is such an interesting and important field. It helps us see that names are not random labels. Thoughtful, they are meaningful linguistic signs connected to human memory and experience. In this presentation, we will look at what toponymy is, how place names are formed, how their meanings change over time, and why they remain valuable for linguists, historians, and geographers. Let us begin with a definition. Toponymy is the systematic study of place names, including their origins, meanings, usage, and classification. Curious, it belongs to onomastics, which is the broader science of names. So, if onomastic studies all kinds of names, toponymy focuses specifically on names of places. The term itself comes from Greek, topos a meaning place, and chronoma a meaning name. This etymology already shows us the basic idea of the discipline. Toponymy stands at the intersection of several fields. It is linguistic because it studies words and meanings. It is historical because names often come from earlier periods and preserve old forms. And it is geographical because names are linked to physical locations. Thoughtful, in other words, when we study a place name, we are not studying only a word. We are also studying the people who created it, the environment they lived in, and the historical processes that influenced that name. Now let us look at the main categories mentioned in the presentation. The broadest category is geonyms, which means names of geographical features on Earth. Within this large group, we find several subtypes. Econyms are names of inhabited places, such as villages, towns, and cities. Hydronyms are names of water bodies, including rivers, lakes, and seas. Oronyms refer to landforms like mountains, hills, and valleys. Curious, these categories help linguists organize and classify place names according to what exactly they denote. The slide also introduces cosmonyms, which are names of celestial bodies beyond Earth, such as planets, stars, constellations, and galaxies. Thoughtful, this is interesting because it shows that the naming process extends beyond the Earth itself. Human beings name not only the places where they live, but also the larger universe they observe. So, the study of naming can move from local geography to cosmic space. This classification helps us better understand the structure and scope of toponymic research. This slide explains one of the most fascinating aspects of toponymy. Place names often tell stories. Many names are descriptive. They reflect the visible features of a place. For example, the presentation mentions Sarroca, which in Catalan means rocky place, and Mont Blanc, which literally means white mountain. Curious, these examples show how people often named places according to the natural landscape they observed. A name could describe color, shape, height, vegetation, or another important feature. But place names can do more than describe the environment. They may also honor individuals, indicate ownership, or commemorate historical events. In this sense, a place name can preserve social and cultural memory. The example of Escalar in the Catalan Pyrenees suggests a more complex structure, where different elements combine to reflect features such as a gorge, a viewpoint, and a passageway. Thoughtful, so a place name can function almost like a linguistic map. It can contain information about both the physical world and human interpretation of that world. At this point, the presentation moves from place names themselves to the broader question of language change. Thoughtful. This is very important because place names do not exist outside language. Like all words, they can shift, stretch, and evolve over time. Their pronunciation may change, their spelling may be adapted, and even their meaning may become unclear or transformed. This dynamic nature of language explains why modern speakers do not always understand the original meaning of old place names. A name that once seemed transparent may become obscure after centuries of phonetic change, borrowing, or reinterpretation. Curious. This slide prepares us for the next part of the presentation, where the causes of semantic change are discussed. In other words, to understand toponymy properly, we must also understand how language works through time. Pause. Place names are not frozen forever. They are part of a living linguistic system, and that system is constantly changing under the influence of usage, history, and contact with other languages. This slide presents for important causes of semantic change. The first is metaphor. Curious, this happens when a word is applied to something new because of perceived similarity. For example, the phrase "the foot of the mountain" uses a body part term to describe a geographical feature. The second is metonymy, where one word replaces another because of a close association. The presentation gives the example of Hollywood, which stands for the American film industry as a whole. The third process is specialisation. Here, a word's meaning becomes narrower and more specific over time. The fourth is generalisation, when a word's meaning becomes broader and covers a wider range of concepts. Thoughtful, these processes matter for toponymy because place names often emerge, change, or survive through exactly these kinds of semantic shifts. A geographical name may begin as a literal description and later become symbolic, figurative, or less transparent. So semantic change is one of the key tools for explaining why place names look the way they do today. The next slide focuses on figurative language in place naming. This is especially interesting because it shows the creativity of human thought. Curious, people do not always name places in a plain or literal way. Very often, they use imagination. The presentation highlights metaphorical naming and personification. In metaphorical naming, a place is described through comparison. For instance, the eye of the storm refers to the calm center of a tempest, while the dragon's teeth describes jagged coastal rock formations. These names are vivid and memorable because they connect the landscape with powerful images. The slide also mentions personification, which means giving human qualities to places or natural objects. This adds emotional force and poetic meaning. In general, figurative place names show that people do not relate to space only practically. Thoughtful, they also interpret it emotionally, symbolically, and artistically. Therefore, toponymy is not only about geography, and history.it is also about human imagination and the expressive power of language. This slide gives us a concrete historical example, the evolution of the name London. According to the presentation, the earliest form was Celtic, Londinian, which may have meant wild place or place of Londinos. Later, during the Roman period, the name was adapted into Londinium, the Roman settlement that eventually grew into a major city. After that, the name continued through medieval and modern periods in the form we know today, London. Curious, what makes this case especially valuable is that it shows continuity and change at the same time. The name survives across different cultural and linguistic eras, but its form and interpretation shift. The slide also points out that the exact original meaning is still debated. Thoughtful, this is a good reminder that etymology is not always fully certain. Linguistic drift, historical distance, and limited evidence can make it difficult to reconstruct the past precisely. Still, even this uncertainty is meaningful. It shows how deeply layered and historically rich a single place name can be. Now we come to another major factor in the development of place names, language contact. Curious, when languages meet through trade, conquest, migration, or settlement, place names are often affected very quickly. Some names are borrowed directly from one language into another. Others are adapted phonetically so that they fit the sound system of the new language. In some cases, the original meaning may be misunderstood and reinterpreted completely. The presentation also notes the influence of Norman French on English place names, especially through endings like "vil" and through softened consonants. Thoughtful, this demonstrates that place names can reveal historical contact between peoples and cultures. They can preserve evidence of power, mobility, cultural exchange, and linguistic adaptation. At the same time, language contact may enrich the lexicon or obscure the original meaning of a name. So, By studying toponymy, we can better understand not only local naming traditions, but also broader processes of intercultural interaction and linguistic transformation. This slide explains why toponymy is so important for scholarship. First, place names act as linguistic fossils. They often preserve elements of ancient languages long after those languages have disappeared from everyday use. Thoughtful, this makes them valuable evidence for linguistic history. Second, place names reveal historical patterns. They can help us trace settlement routes, trade connections, and environmental conditions that shaped human communities. In other words, toponymy provides clues not only about language, but also about social development and movement across space. Third, the slide mentions proto-language reconstruction. By analyzing old place names, linguists can reconstruct earlier language forms and even track the movements of peoples across long periods of time. Curious, so toponymy is much more than a list of names. It is a research tool. It helps scholars recover fragments of the past and connect language data with archaeological, historical, and geographical evidence. That is why this field remains relevant in both classical and modern linguistic studies. To conclude, this presentation shows that every place name carries meaning. Toponymy reveals a deep connection between language, landscape, and history. From the linguistic point of view, names preserve sounds, structures, and semantic shifts. From the geographical point of view, they reflect the physical features of the environment. And from the historical point of view, they preserve traces of the people, events, and cultures that shaped a place. Thoughtful. This is why the study of place names is so valuable. It teaches us that names are not accidental. They are part of cultural memory. They help us read the world not only as a map, but also as a record of human experience. Curious. So when we hear the name of a city, river, mountain, or village, we should remember that behind that name, there is often a long story waiting to be discovered. Thank you very much for your attention.